when it comes to the enlargement of the European Union. It is my great honor to be moderating this session. It is also going live on Euronews right now. My name is Sasha Vakulina. I'm EU correspondent with Euronews. And we're going to be starting in just a few moments with all of the speakers as they're joining us. Recent EU joiners have grown at 4% on average a year from accession initiation until 2008, with half their growth derived from the accession process itself. Enlargement can also shore up Europe's role in the world by growing the single market, global trade, bargaining power and geopolitical weight. How can a new vision for successful enlargement align EU accession, trade and growth strategies, leverage private sector engagement and bring benefits for current and aspiring member states alike? Now, this is definitely a lot to digest, and we're going to be really wanting also to hear some questions from you, and it is my great honor and pleasure to be here to introduce the speakers for this session. Here with us today is Marta Kos, Commissioner for Enlargement from the European Commission.
Hello.
Thank you. Andrej Plenković, Prime Minister of Croatia. Thank you for being here. Milojko Spajić, Prime Minister of Montenegro. Hello. And Andrej Sibiha, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for everybody here in the room and following this session online when you're watching it through web. Please do use the hashtag if you want to reach out. We can then bring some of those questions to our speakers. And let's just, please, there is so much to discuss when it comes to the EU enlargement, and we don't have that much time. So I would like to start straight away. And Commissioner, I want to ask you the question. First, Russia's invasion of Ukraine has injected a renewed sense of urgency when it comes to the EU accession talks. And EU leaders are more frequently meeting with 7 countries that are still waiting at the gate. Some candidates' accession bids have been stalled for well over a decade, despite the process and requirements for EU membership remaining the same. What has changed in the EU that is making accession so difficult as you're starting to take care of this portfolio now?
You mean in the past?
Yes.
Now
first, let's start with what happened in the past and what you have now.
You know, after 10 countries joined in 2004 and later Bulgaria, Romania and Croatia, the last in 2013, the economic and geopolitics have changed. And at that time, it was seen that it is getting more important to go inside or to take care about the deepening of the European Union, in the sense of will be able to answer to those challenges which emerged at that time. This is one point. The second point is also the question of the rule of law. We have some countries inside the European Union who are not following the rule of law, and with the many member states we have seen somehow fear that this could harm the European Union, in the sense of we shouldn't let in no country who is really not 100% prepared to enter, not only on the economic part. We have been talking, in my opinion, much too much about the economic part of the enlargement process, less about the values and less about the rules of law. And then with the methodology in 2020, we have changed this. So now it is Montenegro knows, Ukraine knows, it is more difficult, the negotiating process about the rule of law. But this is also the answer for the last decade, which haven't been good or successful on the field of enlargement.
Well, thank you for this. I want to pick up on that note a little later. Let me just ask this question from Prime Minister. When Croatia joined the EU in 2013 as the 28th member state, it became the second nation to do it on its own after Greece, which was 1981. So that was a very specific case for your country. And there was this kind of enlargement fatigue, largely a result of a slow integration process for new members, which meant also there were kind of more demands and requirements of Croatia when you joined the European Union. How has this heightened level of scrutiny impacted the country now that you have joined also the Schengen area and the Eurozone? So when it comes to tightening some of the rules, how it kind of helped Croatia at the same time?
Yes. Well, Croatia joined, as you rightly put it, on the 1st of July 2013, almost 10 years after the big enlargement in 2004, and our constant policy was at the time to catch up with the countries that were faster. The reason why we joined a decade later were the consequences of the greater Serbian aggression of Milosevic, who basically slowed down everybody in the area of former Yugoslavia except Slovenia. When we joined, it was indeed a very specific path, not only that we joined after Greece, the first one who were alone, but we were at the start in the package with Turkey, where Turkey had a very different finalité politique when it comes to their negotiating framework, while in Croatia's there was an explicit notion that the objective of the accession process is actually to join. The scrutiny was higher. It's very simple to say why. In the beginning of the 90s, the European Union's arms were wide open. They said, friends from the East, you who were not the democracies, who were behind the Iron Curtain, please come join the democratic Western world. As the process unfolded, the arms simply came to a sort of a standstill position into a very critical observation of how the criteria are fulfilled. And we felt it. We also felt it because of the involvement of the bilateral relations in that process and also the general cooperation with the ICTY at the time. But what was good for us, we joined when we were prepared. We, especially in my first government, decided to go into the deeper integration we managed, which is the Eurozone, the Schengen area, the European Stability Mechanism, and the benefits are there. When we started 9 years ago, my first government, we were at 62% of the average development of the European Union. Now we are at 78. By the time we end the third government, we'll be at 82. That means that the economic impact and the developmental impact, infrastructural, including also values, the rule of law and everything that goes with it, were highly appreciated by the Croatian citizens and the society. And the country looks very different now, I would say much better. I believe the time has come, simply to pick up on your first question, where the mood in the European Union has changed. There were two commissioners, your predecessors, which had no single country to show that someone joined. I think this new institutional cycle is an opportunity to see if we all, of course, create conditions and the countries who are on the demandeur side fulfill the criteria, that maybe there will be someone after Croatia who joins, because now it will be a very long time. If another 5 years pass, that means it will be 16 years without any enlargement, and that is certainly something that the Minister of Ukraine and Prime Minister of Montenegro would not like to see as a scenario.
Prime Minister,
Me neither.
well, that's already good. Yeah, but you one of the 9 EU candidate countries. Somehow Montenegro can be considered as the furthest along in the accession process. How did you feel this change, as Prime Minister said, you know, when the arms were first all open, but it's a bit different now for Montenegro, for Ukraine? But also, what areas of progress or closer cooperation with the EU remain? You've just had the Commissioner visiting Montenegro as well, just a couple of days ago, right, before we're meeting here at Davos. How is that going?
Thank you. So, first of all, I don't think that EU accession process is actually competition. You know, like we are all trying to fulfill the basic conditions that EU is requiring for our own good. You know, it's not because of the EU that we are doing all of these requirements. It's for ourselves to develop better, to be better market economies, to have rule of law, to have more fair society, to have more democratic institutions. So this is what we are trying to build. We're trying to build a system. It's especially difficult if you are a country like Montenegro. You know, in ex-Yugoslavia, some of you might know that Montenegro was like a smallest republic, and very few, if any, institutions were based out of Podgorica. Most of them are based out of Belgrade, some of them were based out of Zagreb, a bit maybe in Ljubljana, but, you know, Podgorica literally nothing. So can you imagine 2006, we had to build basically institutions almost from municipal level. Almost from municipal level. So this was like a big step forward for us in the last 18 years. So we are like, by Montenegrin law, we are adults now. So we are hoping that we get adult treatment as well. And you know, we are really trying our best on this path to see it as a two-way partnership. It will be, of course, it's challenging. It always has times when you need to do some tough reforms that are not always understood, you know, by wider population. It's not easy to communicate some things. But I think in Montenegro's case, we are very fortunate that we have almost 80% of population pro-EU. That's absolutely unprecedented. I don't know how is it in Ukraine, probably is also a very high number, but like, I know that even member states sometimes don't have such a pro-EU stance. So I'm really proud of this, but this is a big wind in our back and big obligation for all of us politicians to fulfill what people actually want. So this is something that is, so it's, in a sense, it's easier job, but it's also at the same time more demanding, and you know, we really feel obligation that we have to fulfill this role.
Right. Minister, Ukraine is also on its way to the European Union, and you've heard some of notions here. Now, your accession negotiations officially opened on the 25th of June 2024. Considering that the process is generally considered to be slow and meticulous, what can we realistically expect in terms of some sort of accelerated Ukrainian candidacy? Why I say that is not about fast-tracking it one-way street. It's about Ukraine trying to, every time to produce, to get their progress quicker and quicker.
Thanks a lot for your question. Replying to your question, dear Prime Minister, in Ukraine, more than 90% of our people support Ukrainian EU membership. By the way, that's another part of Russian brutal aggression. Before the full-scale aggression, a little bit more than 50% of our population supported EU accession or full EU membership. So EU must grow. Without enlargement, EU project will not be completed. And you are absolutely right. I totally agree with all previous speakers that we are not competitors. We complement each other. And here also I would like to express gratitude to the Prime Minister of Croatia for the great event in Dubrovnik when we organized a summit at the level of leaders with the participation of Ukraine, I mean Southeastern European leaders, just to unite our positions, just to strengthen our position, to exchange experience on our way to EU. Let me share also with my personal story. I was asked to share with this story. So we were in bunker at the beginning of this full-scale aggression with the president. And on the second day of this brutal aggression, we understood that we will prevail. On the fourth day of this brutal aggression, we applied to EU to become a member of EU. In a half a year, we got the status of candidate. It means that we need such a speed now because of geopolitical reality. And it was also our response to this brutality, to these Russian atrocities, to protect our values. It was our strategic choice. And I would like to remind that EU, when it was founded after the war, it was not only about trade, it was also about to defeat war, to defeat thinking of war, or this war politics, to defeat the Putins of that time, to defeat fascism, Nazism. And regretfully, these diseases returned back to Europe. And now we need to defeat this Russian aggression. We must achieve long-lasting, just, comprehensive peace, because security of Europe and security of Ukraine is indivisible. So we need this. If we are speaking about enlargement, Western Balkan, Moldova, Ukraine, it is also important to treat us now as members of EU. It must be also, or it should be, a starting point when we are speaking about EU policies, when we are speaking, for example, about budget of 2028-2034. Of course, it will be great if in this budget, these ambitious goals of future enlargement should be reflected. Because without this, it will be really very problematic to fulfill this ambitious goal, I mean enlargement of EU. So we are committed to conduct our reforms, and you are absolutely right, dear Prime Minister, it is also our national interest. And it is not a favor for us on our way to become an EU member, because we will contribute in the strength of EU. We will contribute in the competitive advantages of EU with our, for example, defense industries, with our technologies, with our security experience, and probably it will be the best investment for EU. If we are speaking about costs, we have such an evaluations, the cost will be approximately 0.17 of the EU GDP, if we are speaking about the enlargement of 9 countries.
Right. Commissioner?
You said before it's demanding and perhaps slow. It's the opposite. It's more demanding than the accession process, but it is much quicker. For instance, now for the first time we negotiate with a country in war. And it is also, demanding for us, for my team, because especially for Ukraine, we are doing it 2 to 3 times quicker than the normal process. If I just compare it, if we would take the path as it is, let's say, for North Macedonia, a candidate, Ukraine would become a member of the EU in 2045. So we cannot afford this. On the other hand, what Andrew, you have said before, of course it is about the economy, it is single market. I don't know if you have noticed, but we are all representing Slavic countries. Now here, 3 of us coming from ex-Yugoslavia. When Croatia entered the EU in 2013, Slovenia was already a member for 9 years. With your entry, Mr. Prime Minister, the exchange, the trade went up by 370%. We have had good trade relations before. So this is a kind of transformative power of what all the candidate countries have to do. So it is not, we are not, as you have said, doing you a favor. So the whole accession process is a kind of transformation process, as also you have said, Mr. Prime Minister, in Montenegro. And through this, and through the gradual integration, which is also a part of the new methodology, we enable the candidate countries being a part of our single market even before. But speaking about why today it is different, when Slovenia joined the EU, even Croatia later, it wasn't about peace, it wasn't about the freedom. And today with this round of the enlargement or accession process, we are somehow going back to the basics, to the roots of why the European Union has been established. In 1997, Simone Weil, she was the first president of the European Parliament, in her speech said that there are 3 big challenges for all the member states: the challenge of peace, the challenge of freedom, and the challenge of prosperity. And today it is again enlarging European Union. It's about having peace, having freedom, and having prosperity. I could add security. And this is very, very important today. So apparently, EU is really the community which is for many, many states a community where they want to belong. We are now reading that perhaps Iceland would love to go on with the accession process. And what is even more important doesn't have to do just with the economy. There are many autocratic systems or countries who would really love to see Europe fail. So this is the responsibility also on our side, not just on the side of the candidate countries. They say that there is around 50% of non-democratic countries members of the United Nations. So this is another point we have to consider when we speak about the enlargement today.
No, certainly, but also, as you said, when we're changing the whole narrative, also looking, of course it's about economy, of course it is. But at the same time, if we're changing the narrative and giving it more of shared values, then in this case, when it comes to the enlargement process, the European Union and the Commission would also need to look a little bit inside of some of the already existing members of the EU that might not be always sharing the same values and might not be supportive of the idea of the enlargement or the new countries and the new candidates. Prime Minister, what do you think?
You know, I was fortunate enough that I was yesterday at the Japan panel. So they were asking me what Japan can do. I said first that the FTA, the free trade agreement with the EU that they've done in 2019 or something like that, was a huge, it was a huge thing, and it's based on values. So trying to find allies in the world that that the Commissioner has just described, when you have circumstances that you have, I think it's very important to align the values and the economy. And the economy is super important because, many businesses come to, Davos is a place that you meet businesses. And the first question they ask, are you 500,000 or 500 million market? So it's exactly 1,000 times different. So, for Montenegro, it's pretty important. Secondly, so the single market is super important. Secondly, the labor mobility. It's not about only like Montenegro providing the workforce for Germany or for France. It's the other way around as well. Because the mismatches that, for example, Japan has, that you have too many workers of one kind and too few of other kind. Another story was that in 1985, there was the Plaza Accord. The US called in Germany, Japan, France, and a couple of other countries about the currency fluctuations at that time. What happened is that there was a deal that US depreciates the currency and the other countries appreciate their currencies. It's kind of unthinkable in current time, but that's what happened back then. What happened to Japan, because it was a single market on its own, they had a massive bubble. The mother of all the bubbles. They had huge economic issues. They had deflation for 30 years. This year, actually in 24, it was the first time they got inflation. They were actually super happy they have inflation after 30 years. So this is what happened to somebody who was outside of this cushion of a single market, big single market. It didn't happen to Germany. It didn't happen to France. It didn't happen to many other European countries that did the same as Japan did. So what I'm trying to say is not only for small countries or like countries like, I call Ukraine, actually, Ukraine is easternmost Western Balkan nation. That's the way we look at Ukraine from Montenegro. So it's not, for all of us, is not, the benefits are actually evenly distributed. Mm-hmm. So it's not always easy to see that, but I fully agree with my colleague from Ukraine that this is a process, two-way process, and I think everybody benefits from this process, especially because it's based on values. Montenegro in 2020, for example, just 5 years ago, it was financing infrastructure from way far away from European continent or NATO circumstances. It was the main tourists, or the revenue was coming literally outside as well. The main investors as well. So this is not sustainable, right? You have economy looking one way, the geopolitics or like your politics or your direction looking another way. We managed to fix it in a big way, but still, I say we need more integration. We need more Europe in Montenegro. We need more Montenegro in Europe.
Surely, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And I want to ask you that when it comes to sharing those values, because this is such an important thing, but there yet, within the European Union, you do have to convince some members that you are sharing those values with the EU indeed, and it is a two-way street for the candidates and the European Union. How do you convince them? Because with some of them it is rather hard.
Yes, you're absolutely right, but we try to find the proper arguments. And here, with your permission, I would like to thank you, dear Prime Minister, for your definition of our geopolitical location. Really appreciate it. Now, returning back to your question, you see here is also important to prevent abusing or misusing of the right of veto of some EU members. I think it is inappropriate to blackmail, for example, publicly future EU members of possibility to block them on their way to EU. It seems to me, if we are speaking about unity, and we need this unity as never before, having such geopolitical challenges, having such a brutal Russian aggression, we need this unity. And we need new dynamic and speed on our accession way. So we do really count that during Polish presidency and then Danish presidency, we will manage to open at least 2 clusters. So here, Ukraine sometimes breaks the rules and make precedents to our friends from other countries, or we are following them, it doesn't matter. Yes, so, but in any case, we need this speed. Not only because that we are pushing, because such a reality, we need to react very fastly, very quickly, to keep this dynamic. So we rely on EU members that we will open these clusters during Polish presidency, and it will be this presidency, I mean Polish and Danish, it will be the year of concrete steps on the way of enlargement, of EU enlargement. And third point, which I would like to raise, reconstruction in Ukraine. It will be probably the project of the century. It will be also, it seems to me, a trigger for EU economy. It will be an opportunity for EU economy, for EU companies. We are speaking about damages approximately for about 600 billion at this stage. So huge challenges and huge opportunities. And I think that if we will combine our efforts, we will make this part of the world much more safer.
Yeah. I want to briefly, just very briefly, Prime Minister, you, as you said, just over 10 years for your country since joining, and then the full integration of Schengen and the euro area. These points that we've just heard from the 2 candidate countries regarding how they have to overcome the obstacles within the EU of some of the member states who are less willing on continuing the enlargement and of supporting the candidates while also trying to sometimes go into other techniques in negotiations. Of course, there are negotiations. But do these existing countries then share the same values that are actually demanded of the candidates?
First of all, we have to bear in mind that every enlargement process is a politically driven process. This is key to understand. We have understood it more than fully in our time, and we were, in our counting, at least 5-6 years later in the EU than we should have been. What has opened after the immensely fast path of Ukraine, and you applied in the most dire moment of your history, was the change of mindset. When we were in Versailles during the French presidency, the mindset was very careful of the leaders. As Russia's aggression accelerated and became more ferocious against Ukraine, the mindset changed. This occurred from basically March till June 22. In June 22, the leaders had a different mindset. And all of a sudden, we can now speak about the new strategy of enlargement. But what I would like to note, that everybody is realistic, because sense of realism is the most important notion in the process of enlargement, is that the forgotten Copenhagen, the 4th Copenhagen criteria of 1993, which is so-called the absorption capacity of the European Union, has come back. I haven't heard about it for 10 years. The first time it was mentioned was in Grenada during the Spanish presidency, and the absorption capacity, translated into a common language, means what is the budgetary cost of enlargement, what will be the effect of new members on the play of contributor countries and beneficiary countries, what will be the impact on the policies, cohesion, agriculture, any policy that you can imagine. That's why this complex process which is ahead is, in my view, and I've been sitting in the Council for 9 years, is very positive in terms of will of the leaders. I've never seen such a positive attitude about enlargement for a very long time. Bear in mind that the first summit with the Balkan leaders took place in Zagreb in 2000, the second in Thessaloniki in 2003, and then we had a break of 15 years until the one happened in Sofia. And I was insisting, I said, look, if we have countries who want to join us, and we never meet them in the club of 27, or even 28 at a certain point, because the UK was still there, it doesn't make sense. What has changed since 2018, we meet on a daily basis. Ukraine is a special case, we meet all the time. More basically, I have the impression that President Zelensky is part of the council. There wasn't a council where he isn't addressing us, but in a more different security and the facing the aggression context. I think that this notion of pushing from the demandeur side is important, but the slightly not closed but opening arms is critical. And this is, I think, what I have felt in your mission letter that the President von der Leyen sent you, what is the general feeling. So I think we should, on both sides, seize the moment.
Commissioner.
Yes, Mr. Prime Minister, it's about the absorption capability of the European Union, and therefore, under the President von der Leyen, we last year already have started the so-called pre-enlargement review on different fields. So it is review about the values, about the financing, about the policies, about the governance, and we have to be ready, otherwise the EU will not be strong. And speaking about the economic power, nowadays in this changed environment, the power is getting more and more important, or is getting also misused. So I would say that when we speak about the enlargement, we should speak about three paths. First is negotiating with the candidate countries. Second path is getting EU ready for the new members. And the third path is working with the member states to overcome their aspirations or overcome their sorrows or their concerns. It's not easy doing this, walking on these three paths at the same time.
Yeah, but you see, there is so much, we've heard from Croatia, we've heard from the two candidates. There are so much expectations from you and when it comes to the enlargement of the European Union.
Doable. You have said, Andriy, the Polish presidency, the Danish presidency could be the best presidencies when we speak about the enlargement. I also see my work enabling the presidencies to be successful. So in this year, technically, we could have 20 IGCs, meaning opening or closing, opening clusters, closing chapters. You have mentioned two clusters for you. If the member states will allow it. You were speaking about veto. We speak about the unanimity decision-making process in the Council. Mr. Plenković, you've been there, you said, for 9 years. Sometimes it's not easy to get the unanimity decision. So this is, but technically it is possible, around 1,000 people in my team and in other DGs are working for one candidate country. So it is really now the priority. Technically it's doable, but we have heard it is a political process, so it has to be backed up by the member states.
Yeah, with all this, work that you're having on your side, I'm also thinking about the candidates and the enormous amount of work they have been putting into this process for years. And that's when finding this balance between the three and also the political side of the enlargement, this is when I'm trying to understand how to. Is there a way to change this way for the candidates while they are doing their work on the progress and the reforms that they have to do? But whilst they are not being in the EU, being on the outside, it is hard to get in when it comes to the political process which is happening inside, within the member states. It is hard. That's what I'm trying to see, whether there can be any change when you're now taking care of the enlargement portfolio, which is enormous work to do, for those who are waiting for years.
That's why I do my work now, and that's why I say it's the historical moment, because it's not only about the responsibility you have said before of the candidate countries. It's about our responsibility of the EU and credibility. If we bring, let's say, Ukraine to the end of the accession process, hard work, and then there will be no green light for their entry, it shouldn't happen. But once again, we are working on this. It is not easy, but since everything around us has changed, we were speaking about peace and freedom before. Nobody was speaking about peace in connection with the enlargement process in the years before. And another change, when Slovenia entered, it was approximately like this, that if the candidate countries have been ready, the EU was able to accept them. Nowadays, it's not only if the candidate countries are ready, we will accept them. We have to be ready. And this is huge change. But what is stable in this world? So it will be also good for us that we change. We cannot use the same mentality or attitude today as it was 30 years or 20 years back. But, changing is not easy, especially for the community of 27 different, not always different, but yes, countries.
I'm going to have one more question, and then we're going to open the floor to the audience here. When it comes to the case of Ukraine and the negotiations, I'm sure that you've heard, and Foreign Minister, and you've heard lots of criticism regarding whether things are being fast-tracked when it comes to Ukraine compared to some of the other countries that have been waiting for longer and then applying longer and so on. What's your take on that? Because this is an important issue to address.
We love it. We want to be even faster. We don't mind at all. For us, it's totally okay. It's just, obviously, don't forget us as well. I mean, in the meantime, but, progression of Ukraine is extremely welcome. And we as I already said, we feel Ukraine is part of the wider region, and we feel we have common destiny, and we want to see Ukraine progress as fast as possible. If it's 2-3 times, if it can get faster, I don't know if you guys from your team can handle it, if you have enough bandwidth to do so. But I would love to see that, really. And, if Ukraine can join even, before Montenegro, I'm okay with that. I wouldn't, it's fine. But I would say that we should still keep some level of meritocracy, and as in meritocratic approach, and that yes, it's a political thing to join EU, and there's a political will of 27 nations. But if there's no meritocratic approach, or if we are too lenient on this, I think then, the meritocratic approach of changing institutions is also going to be impaired a little bit. So we have to see that, for example, Montenegro has done, at least from our potentially subjective point of view, but we've got EBAR, we are progressing fast on closing chapters and so on and so forth. So I think Montenegro has done a lot, and we will do even more. So our plan is extremely ambitious. We want in 2 years, i.e. by end of 26, to fully close all the chapters, to be fully ready for EU. So we are hoping the EU can see that, can recognize the efforts, can recognize the spirit that we are projecting, and that they will accept us, and they will hopefully by end of 26 we close all the chapters, but in 28 we become the 28th member state.
By the way, we are not competitors. Once again,
exactly.
I'd like to
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but you know what I'm talking about. You must have heard the criticism about Ukraine being in a different situation that is happening much faster for Ukraine.
If you're confident about yourself, you don't care about the others. So it's all about. It's all about, we are focused on ourselves from yesterday. What we are trying to do is improve Montenegro from yesterday. And today's Montenegro, to improve today's Montenegro to tomorrow's Montenegro. That is all what we are focused on. And we are focused on improving the relations with member states, better understanding, having more tourists from EU to see Montenegro, enjoy Montenegro for themselves, and testify that Montenegro should be the next member state.
And by the way, we complement each other, and recently in Kiev we had ministerial meeting at the level of Ministers of Foreign Affairs of Southern Eastern countries. And we approved joint communique in which we agreed to support each other on our way to become an EU members. So we coordinate our efforts, and we are interested in this enlargement. We are interested in the membership of each other.
This is also the new element in this, the candidates supporting each other. There is some, I would say, peer pressure among them, which is good. Who would be the first? It's about being also competitive. But
it's the race.
But I think this is healthy, because it is based on the merit-based principle, meaning, it's not about timing. Sometimes I hear, but the Western Balkan states, they wait for so long. Yeah. It is not about how long they are waiting, it is how much they are able to deliver. and about their political will, and this has changed. So it is merit-based, meaning that of course we follow thoroughly what is happening in the country. If they do what they have to do, we say negotiations, mainly it is take it or leave it. Sorry that I say it so bluntly. So you have no possibility to now negotiate on some important basic value in the EU. But when Montenegro says we want to finish the negotiations until the 2026, of course I support this. I will also push them. If Albania says we want to finish with the negotiations until at the end of 27, EU support this, but they have to deliver. And I think this is also a new momentum. They work together, they support each other, and this geopolitics have also brought more solidarity, and this is one of the most positive sides out of this really not easy geopolitical situation today. It is more solidarity among the member states towards the candidate countries. It is so, and this is one of the points which is also very important for the EU. One of the most important values is solidarity. Yeah. And of course the rule of law. We were starting with the rule of law before. Having really rule of law means that this will also attract the investors. We see now that investors would love to not go around the world because of the changes in the world. They would love to be, if I speak about Europe, closer to Europe. So developing rule of law would mean also better conditions for the economies.
May I just
yes, please.
At one point, I think what we should remember is there was one element, and that is the Russia's aggression in Ukraine that changed everything. It has fulfilled the pledge of the NATO members for 2% of GDP for defense. Had there not been such an event, the spending on defense would be less. Change number one. Second, Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia have been moved from a compartment called neighboring countries, which means without the perspective of membership, into the enlargement pot. All of this has happened in the last 2.5 years. Had there not been the February of 2022, we would be in a very different situation. But another element about the absorption capacity, which we haven't mentioned so far, but we have to say it because it's critical, it's essential. Besides the budgetary implications, there is another elephant in the room that we should be addressing, and that is the decision-making process in the European Union and the institutional architecture. If you look at the French and the German papers, and they always come as a sort of prelude to what will be happening with the institution, these are the two critical elements. Union, which is today of 27, theoretically plus 8 or 9, it's a different organization. It is already now odd to those who were there when there were 6 members, then 9, then 10, etc., but when it's 36, it's a completely different organization. And these two elements will be the underlying question marks for the dynamics of the enlargement. This is key.
Final thoughts on that, Minister?
I totally agree with Prime Minister. So this process demands changes from EU members, from EU Commission, and also from candidate countries. I totally agree with you.
Absolutely, and as long as we do have this a little bit of this peer pressure, but you're totally right. This is a complementary process, and we should all support each other. We shouldn't be jealous of each other. We shouldn't be, trying to lower somebody's ambition so that we stand taller. I think it's important that we do our best for ourselves. And this is the key. And I'm sure that the Commission will support the meritocratic approach, and then, as we progress, that we will be rewarded. But on the other hand, it's also our obligation to do much more. Economies, again, I'm going back to the point, sorry to kind of digress a little bit, but I think the EU's commitment to the future member states is an investment.
Yeah.
Is an investment into a new market, into the new supply chain, into the communication channels, into new worlds that we're unable to have until that point. So, if you look at, and I mentioned Plaza Accord on purpose, You know, that was the time, it was 1985. Since then, EU had 20 years of bonanza, basically. Not everybody had it. So this is something that investment in enlargement is a true testament to have for security as well, for safety, for many other reasons. So I think EU should a little bit open up and think about the wider picture, think about the long term as well, think about the impacts that it would produce. And I think all of this absorption capacity, etc., yes, obviously, in terms of accounting, yes, you have to make the numbers right. But these numbers are not so significant as they seem in the first place.
And that's it. That's all we have time for. Unfortunately, thank you so much. There is a lot of food for thought, lots of work for everybody, for the Commission, for the Member States, for the candidates. Thank you very much, and thank you for watching.
The Collective Security Treaty Organization led by Russia. Lavrov said Moscow was ready to assist in the normalization of relations.
Надеемся, что и в дальнейшем российская сторона будет учитывать все аспекты происходящего, избегая односторонних трактовок, которые, к сожалению, мы видели в последнее время, в последние дни.
Мы всегда ценили, продолжаем ценить братские связи с армянским народом, с Арменией, нашим естественным стратегическим партнером, союзником, и заинтересованы в том, чтобы многовековые традиции дружбы, добрососедства укреплялись и развивались.
Azerbaijan and Armenia relations have been on and off for over 3 decades since both nations fought a bloody war in the late 1980s and early 1990s.
Russia is intensifying its bombardment campaign as it strikes multiple Ukrainian cities. Moscow fired Iranian-made Shahed strike drones as it targeted the central city of Cherkasy. The attack caused some damage to properties in the vicinity. Locals